I had some very intelligent people tell me that buying real estate was the stupidest thing I could do.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 45 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
Hello and welcome to episode 13. We've all seen those shows on HGTV where they buy a house out of foreclosure or auction, they rehab it, they flip it, they make lots of money, it looks exciting and glamorous and fun. But is it really like that in real life? Today, I'm going to talk with someone who does it for real, and we're going to find out. Patrick Spitzley is the owner of the Spitzley Group, and he's based here in Grand Rapids, and that's what he does. He buys the worst of the worst out of foreclosure. These houses are in good neighborhoods, and he has a crew that goes in and completely rehabs them top to bottom. So we're going to talk about how he does it. We're also going to talk about one of his flips that did not turn out the way he wanted it to. We're going to talk about the spec house that he built and his recent trip to Nigeria and the lessons that he learned while there that will help him in his business today. So tell me, what does Spitzley Group do?
Yeah, we there's a large umbrella under which we operate. My primary objective is owning rental property and establishing passive income. We can touch on that specifically. I'm also a licensed builder, so I serve clients in that capacity, and I've gotten into the spec home game, so there's opportunity as a licensed builder there as well. And then third, I'm a licensed real estate agent, and that developed as a result of just generally having need as a real estate investor and simply needing to be able to hop on deals as quickly as possible. It made sense for me to use an agent for a while until I was well versed in it, but I got to the point where I was very comfortable with it, and that's the point at which I became my own agent, and I also serve clients in that capacity because I'm very experienced. Also being a licensed builder really plays well for the sake of clients and just being able to pick out the lemons very quickly, or understanding if it's a good quality house or not. So I would say that those three things are the primary focuses currently of what we do.
Let's talk about those three focuses that you have, and let's start with your real estate investments. Tell me a little bit about those.
Sure. I'm in the downtown Grand Rapids rental game currently. I would say that my eyes are always open to great opportunity and great investments regardless, but my comfort zone in getting into this originally was largely in the Heritage Hill, Easttown, historic areas, Alger Heights, by the zoo. So generally speaking, areas in which People want to live because they're walkable, they're attracted to the restaurants, the bars, the breweries, churches. My wife and I attend a church that's within a quarter mile of properties that I own. So generally speaking, those are the areas that attract me. Our strategy has been to buy the most decrepit, literally condemned homes. I prefer the home to be condemned because there's only so many people that have the company abilities and skill set and really the taste for doing that much work to a property. So as a result, on the buy side, I can get a lower purchase price because we're cutting out competing with all of the owner occupants and the paint and carpet investors and flippers, because that model is very lucrative for the vast majority of investors. Now, I own a company that has the ability to do, anywhere from a general, my average remodel is probably about a $50,000 to $100,000 remodel. So I have to buy a home in pretty rough shape for these numbers to make sense.
Are these all single family homes that you're buying?
I own single family homes and duplexes.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's your strategy is single families and duplexes.
Yeah, currently. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like buying them in the most decrepit of shape because then that gives us the ability to go in and do all new HVAC. So that's going to be a furnace and air conditioning, new heat runs, et cetera, et cetera. So I like that being all new. I like all of my plumbing being all new. Generally, my homes are going to be about 100-year-old home on average. So as a result, they all have galvanized pipes, a lot of boiler systems for the HVAC component. So generally speaking, as a landlord, all of those things are going to be maintenance, just maintenance. And that's really going to undermine my long-term goals of passive income. I don't want to have properties just produce enough monthly rent in order to just pay off the maintenance. So I generally will bulletproof is kind of a term that I've heard coined for the sake of what we do. So we generally bulletproof them. Idea being that in the first 10 years of my cash flowing that actively as a rental, that I'm not going to get undermined by maintenance. Of course, there's going to be little things here and there, but...
And let's talk about bulletproofing. Does that mean you're going in and if it has galvanized pipes, you're replacing all the pipes?
Yes.
So these are condemned homes, so you can pretty much open up the walls, replace the plumbing, the electrical, whatever needs to be replaced to make it pretty much a brand new
More
home?
so than what needs to be replaced, I prefer to replace it all.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you replace
that's
the
my model.
galvanized plumbing with?
Updated PEX plumbing.
So you're using PEX then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like copper. They think copper is great, but PEX is pretty new to the market.
PEX is kind of the latest and greatest, and it is certainly less expensive. And I can also say now that there's enough of a history of success with PEX, because a lot of people were concerned, do the fittings break, et cetera, et cetera. So the bias was generally toward copper. I don't know what the math is on it, but probably 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's certainly more expensive, and almost everybody that I've experienced in the plumbing world simply uses PEX now. And this includes high-end homes.
What's the price? Oh, even high-end homes are using
Certainly.
PEX now. So PEX is not going to go the way of polybutylene pipes.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about?
Certainly.
Yeah, I had a home in New Mexico that had polybutylene pipes.
Okay.
It cost me about $5,000 to completely repipe that home.
Sure.
What's the price differential between PEX and copper?
I am not an expert on the exact price, but I would say it is certainly double. Simply the price of copper 2-3 years ago was astronomical. Copper prices have since come down. I can tell you that because I went on a scrap run and sold copper yesterday. So I'm versed in that area as well. Doing these old homes produces a lot of scrap metal, so that's a nice little bonus for us every year.
And for
I don't know the facts.
Yeah, I mean, this is not an interview about PEX, but just so people know what we're talking about. Basically, for plumbing purposes, PEX is within the past 10 years has kind of become the go-to transport of water through a house.
Right.
And what is it, basically rubber tubing?
Yeah, just plastic.
Just plastic tubing?
Yeah, just plastic. And it can bend corners, it can get into tight places, generally where you'd have multiple fittings that need to be soldered in a copper setting. PEX can simply make those turns without a fitting, and so it expedites labor for the installation of plumbing, and it also simply costs, way less.
All right. What are some of the other things you do to bulletproof a home?
Sure. Part of our model is to essentially use the exterior shell remains the exterior shell. Generally speaking, we're going to put a roof on every house. Depending on the condition of wood siding, the vast majority of 100-year-old homes in this example have wood siding and paint chips, and the city doesn't like that, so then they're enforcing people to have to maintain that. So probably every year, realistically speaking, I would need to get a painter in there to keep up with that. And so I'm seeing dollar signs roll in the form of maintenance as a landlord. So we'll do vinyl siding around a lot of those. I pretty much put new windows in every single house. Almost no windows are worth salvaging. We will maintain old stained glass windows rather, because that adds character and all that. But we'll have to put a storm window on the outside to make it energy efficient. So we kind of maintain that exterior shell, and then we essentially, I don't like using the word gut the interior, but we have wholeheartedly gutted homes to simply start over. And oftentimes that's easier and more cost effective than trying to snake wires through old plaster walls, and plumbing can get really difficult. So oftentimes we will open up in earnest the entire main floor of a home right down to studs, and then we'll pick spaces upstairs where it makes sense as well. So we run all these new systems, and this includes updating electrical panel and mast. We are essentially building a brand new home inside of an old home shell. It is the model that we've established.
Well, what are some of the considerations? You mentioned Heritage Hill. That's one of the areas that you're doing this in. Now, obviously, it's a historic district, so
Right.
There's other considerations you have to take into account when you're doing those things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Right. Yeah. I love the historic districts, but I also see challenges with them. That the historic protection certainly brings a lot of value to homeowners, and it keeps the neighborhood up to a particular standard. To that end, it's also rather cumbersome when you're trying to improve a property because you are very limited as to what you can do on the exterior. I guess very limited is an appropriate way to say it.
Well, give me some examples.
They control a lot of that.
Yeah. What might you do differently, or what have you done differently on some of your homes?
We're not allowed to do vinyl windows in the historic district. So as a result, we have to simply refurbish the old wood windows. The reason this is a big deal is because very few people are versed in it and do it well. And secondly, the cost is $600 to $700 to simply refurbish an old window. And when you're done, you still have an old window. And then I have to put about $150 storm window on the outside. So collectively, I am anywhere from, depending on the size of window, $500 to $800 into a single window. And mind you, these historic homes have 20, 30, 40 windows, a lot of windows for a property. And they're beautiful homes, and it's great when they're done. But the cost implications are double, triple that of what vinyl windows are. Granted, we still do supposedly get the same R value, so we get to, still have the same energy efficiency with either window. So I like that, but there are challenges with repairing old wood windows, and that's assuming it goes well. Sometimes the wood is decayed and they've got to rebuild a part of a sash and all that, and that can be additional expense above and beyond simply replacing it with a vinyl window.
Right. So windows are one thing. Siding is another. You can't just put vinyl siding on a historic home. So, what else do you see that ends up costing more money in a historic district?
The long-term maintenance in regards to wood siding, wood shake, cedar shake shingles, soffit, fascia, all of these wooden components don't hold paint for the 50 years that would be the lifetime of a properly sided home. So as a result, as a landlord and property owner, I am sending a painter back to that property generally once a year to spend a morning or up to a full day touching that stuff up. That can be a headache on my end, but to that end, all of my neighbors are doing the same and maintaining their property the same. So it brings me value there. So I don't like to gripe about it too much because there's certainly pros of it too. But it is a limiting variable in those areas because I can't just throw metal, fascia, and soffit on the eaves and then vinyl side up to it, wrap the windows with metal, and have essentially a maintenance-free exterior. So I have a lot of potential maintenance that goes into that. Also with front doors, the same thing applies. I have to use a wood door. It has to meet historic standards. You have to employ you either have to be very skilled or employ a very skilled individual to weather strip it appropriately and simply make it up to kind of what our modern energy codes look like. Otherwise, you're going to have a door that leaks like a sieve and it costs you a bunch of money there. So and the cost implications of that, as opposed to going to the local box store and buying a $300, $400, $500 door. I mean, to refurbish an old door is to the tune of $1,000 to $2,500, depending on how ornate it is. My point is, it's ultimately easily double, if not triple. It looks great. It's very attractive. I really enjoy walking those neighborhoods. But as a landlord buying investment property, I have to keep these numbers in mind because they really affect my bottom line.
Would you say that these costs are offset at all by the value and the appreciation you see in the home, or the rent increases that you're able to get, or even your vacancy rate?
Great question. We have such a strong market in Grand Rapids right now that I can get approximately the same rent with a lot less hassle if I buy one house outside of the historic district. That's actually a strategy I've used. I own multiple properties that are literally one or two homes outside the historic district. I love owning those homes because I'm not regulated by those historic standards. I can do my vinyl, my maintenance-free stuff, but I still tap into essentially the rental market of the historic district. I do gain a lot of value in the historic district simply in regards to the value of the home. So So there's certainly something to be said for it there. To that end, the historic district is going to bring a bit more in rent, but in my experience, relative to the additional challenges that go in rehabbing a home in the historic district versus one, for example, one house out or in other neighborhoods in Grand Rapids, I can still be, I would say that ultimately my numbers still jive approximately the same. So if I get more in rent in the historic district and the value of the home is higher, it costs me more money to get into it versus something in, say, Easttown, just another area in Grand Rapids that I am partial to and own a lot of property in. In that area, I can essentially do within reason whatever I want, but I can still get high rent for our high-end rentals. So, tough question to give a really direct answer to.
Well, let's talk about the numbers, and because you're bulletproofing the home, so you're putting in a substantial amount of money in the front end, which hopefully, as you own the property, it provides more cash flow for you. So can you talk about those numbers a little bit, how that actually works out for you?
Do you want me to use a specific example of a home? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. A specific example would be great.
Sure. I guess my bias is toward the Easttown area. It's a great walkable area in Grand Rapids. The properties themselves are built very well. So generally speaking, they all throughout the upper floor and the main floor of the home have oak hardwood floors already. Oftentimes, if they don't, we would then install oak hardwood floors. I do not like having carpet in my rentals. It's just going to create long-term maintenance and additional challenges, and it can be a major turnoff for tenants when they walk in and see the previous tenant making a mess all over the carpet. With hardwoods, this is part of my bulletproofing strategy, if you will, we can simply buff and poly the floors. They look brand new again, and tenants really like that. It feels super clean when they go into it. It helps to lease them ahead of time. We do a lot of pre-leasing, and it brings top dollar in rent essentially.
Can you give me kind of a ballpark idea of when you buy a home, what you typically pay for it?
Sure.
These are condemned homes, so hopefully you're getting a good price on them.
Right.
What you typically put into a home to bulletproof it.
Yeah.
And then kind of what the typical rent would be, what the return would be on your investment.
Yeah. Those numbers ebb and flow greatly. I bought my first home about 7 years ago, so my numbers from 7 years ago are vastly different than now. I got into this when the bottom had fallen out and all the chicken littles were screaming the sky is falling. And on top of that, I had some very intelligent people who are multimillionaires tell me that buying real estate was the stupidest thing I could do. So I was very countercultural at that time when I got in. So my numbers there versus now are vastly different. I'll speak on the numbers now. In the Easttown area in particular, my bias is toward a duplex or a single family home that I can get we'll say 4 bedrooms in. That's a great number. I would say that on the buy side right now, for the worst of the worst, you're paying around $50,000, and upwards of my comfort zone kind of tops out at $75,000 to $80,000 because of the size of remodel that we're going to do. My numbers stop working after that. So I get in depending on what it needs, and remember, in my mind, it needs almost everything. I almost am not even going to keep a furnace that's only 10 years old. Certainly not if it's not a high efficiency furnace, because I want to be able to deliver an end product to my tenants that is as energy efficient as possible, to make their experience proper. And I like the green concept. I like the idea of not just leaking heat that was inefficiently produced out into the environment. So there's a little bit of pride in our properties there. So we're going to do anywhere from a $50,000 remodel up to about a $100,000 remodel. So there are variables there. One of the largest variables is simply the size of the home. Another one that we've seen is if it doesn't have wood floors or proper wood floors on the second floor of the house, it is very expensive to then go through and install three-quarter oak and then sand it and finish it, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're going to put hardwood, you're going to make sure one way or another there's hardwood floors throughout every floor of the
Historically, house. I didn't. I guess when I first got into this, I didn't. And that was a mistake because now I'm going back to those properties and there's additional maintenance and challenge and or we can no longer buff and poly what was there. So there's some challenges with not choosing to do that. So now we just generally do it. But that's to the tune of thousands of dollars. I mean, to buy the wood is $2.50 a square foot. To install it is probably $2 a square foot. And then to finish it is certainly $2 to $4 a square foot, depending on the professional that you find. So we're talking $6 to $10 a square foot in an area that is 700 to 1,000 square feet. So we're talking real money here. So when I pull up the carpet and I see that there are wood floors on that second floor that we can maintain, that's a big swing in numbers for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't find those wood floors on the second floor, then you're saying that you're probably going to take a pass on it.
Not necessarily, depending on what all the home needs.
But it sounds like your range, like between the acquisition and the rehab, you want to be somewhere between $100,000 to $175,000.
Very accurate.
Now, are you working with investors, private money that you're using, or are you at the point where you have your own cash to put into these?
Yes and yes. My bias is toward private money. I am a mover and a shaker, and I run into situations just simply having a network around town, knowing a lot of the other guys that do this. I'll get a text at noon that says, "Hey man, I've got to close this tomorrow. I don't have the ability to close it. It sounds like it's something that you could be interested in. Can you execute the deal?" So there's been times where I'm reaching out to my private money saying, "Oh my gosh, can you please send money now? Because I have a great opportunity." In the standard conventional banking world, that's simply not an option. So that's a major piece of my business that has enabled me to have success, and I'm very thankful for it because it opens me up to a wide range of deals. In theory, you reach a point eventually where you don't use private money in that capacity, in that you've generated your own capital and you've cashed out and you have proper mortgages for the sake of long-term lower rate financing, but there's still a lot of value that hard money brings.
Yeah, the quickness of cash, if you can get that quickly,
certainly
you can do a lot more deals that way.
And don't even try making an offer on one of these decrepit homes with anything other than cash, because they simply are unfinanceable. So you have to be equipped with cash.
Do you ever, after the fact, go in and get traditional financing?
Up to this point, I have not. I have a strategy in place that I am pursuing. I guess I've been pursuing for 5 years. So it's a very long-term strategy where an individual is allowed. I'm sure there's lending officers out there. They're going to catch some fallacies here, but my understanding of it is I can get 10 personal mortgages. My wife can get 10 personal mortgages. So collectively, we have 20 proper mortgage slots. One of which is generally going to be for our personal home, and then we might reserve a second in the event that an opportunity on a lake comes up that could be an investment property, could be both personal and investment. There's opportunity there. So my point here is I want to get to the point where I have 18 proper financeable projects that are cash flowing, and I have a bias toward wanting to make those very strong values because I only get 18 ever. So I don't want to take a property, one of the first properties that I own, the value of it's probably $60,000 to $70,000. One of the strongest return on investments I've ever made because of the amount of money that I'm into it relative to the rent that I bring in. So it's a great property in that regard, but for the sake of a long-term coveted mortgage slot, it's simply not a wise play.
You're estimating that between you and your wife, you have 20 slots that you could
essentially
fill. You could get proper residential mortgages, but you have yet to fill any of those slots? Is that
exactly? Yep.
Okay.
I am still in private money mode to simply grow. The relationship that I have with the private money that I use is there's a long history. So I kind of view it as I view paying that rate as essentially a way to say thank you for all the many years. And this is since I've known him since I was 6 years old, in particular. So there's a long history here, and I like the idea of him doing well while my business does well.
Right.
So I didn't like the idea.
Situation for both of you.
I didn't like the idea of bringing him in, having him around for a year, reaching out to him on some of these deals. Hey, in 24 hours, I need $100,000. Oh, gee, thanks. And then cashing him out and having it not be a wise investment for him ultimately. Because I'm going to be in this game for many, many, many years, and having a proven track record and a history will bring a lot of value to essentially any hard money guy.
How do you typically structure your hard? Do you consider it hard money or private money? Are you paying points on it when you get it, or is it more just like a private loan?
I guess the better term would be a private loan.
Okay, so how do you typically structure that? And I know every deal is different, but what's the range of interest that you're paying and the payback periods?
Sure, I would say that in that world, you are very blessed if you can get a 7% rate. I would say that was more 3, 4, 5 years ago when people that had a lot of money were simply looking for places to put it. We are no longer in that world now. So I have seen an increase there. I would say that ultimately, if you can offer private money a 10% return, that is generally pretty attractive to them. We as real estate investors that are borrowing private money are certainly a more risky proposition than conventional financing. So that's why there's a bit of a range. It really is risk tolerance of whoever has the money.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you kind of start with the private money person and see what their risk tolerance is, what their payback preference is.
Right.
Are you doing interest only, or are you paying principal down, and is there a payback period?
At this time, we're doing interest only because I'm growing. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't make sense to try to pay down principal and then simply reborrow principal. So generally speaking, it's interest only. We're getting to a point where my business is more mature, where we have enough cash flowing rentals that simply generate capital each month, that model may shift. But for the time being, I really prefer an interest only payment. He's happy, I'm happy. Kind of don't want to rock the boat while I'm in growth mode, because he brings me a lot of value being able to grow my business.
Mm-hmm. And so your strategy is basically upscale downtown living. So talk about the types of tenants. I mean, it sounds like you have a real solid strategy of buying the condemned homes, bulletproofing them, putting probably more into them than you actually pay for the homes. So that way, over the long run,
almost double at times.
Yeah, almost double. So over the long run, you really don't have the high maintenance expenses that you might typically have on these homes. What kind of tenants are you getting in there? How long do they stay? And what kind of return on your investment are you getting?
Sure. So my strategy is centered around the tenant that we're going to get into the property. So if I own something with, say, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, in these cool walkable areas, I can get a college clientele. That concerns people. That hearing that college people live in these rentals is shocking at times. Oh my gosh, you deal with that? That's terrible. I can tell you that when I was in college, I was probably one of the best tenants that my landlord could have had. So I have reason to hope that the college-age generation can be good people, can be good tenants. I've also proven it largely because with these homes that have granite countertops, all brand new wood floors, stainless steel appliances, all of our doors trimmed, drywall, fixtures, plumbing, all of that is brand new. Therefore, we can charge top dollar rent. We get top dollar clients, and a lot of college kids can in fact be top dollar clients, but as a result, they don't want to beat their place up because they are paying that premium to have a nice place. So you get a clientele that is partial toward having a nice place and keeping it nice. Therefore, they generally are not ruining your place. And then I've had properties turned back over to me where I didn't even have to send a cleaning crew in because everything was pristine and perfect. Nothing needed to be cleaned or changed because they had pride in essentially ownership while they lived there, and they even cleaned when they left. So I've had good experiences there. I'm also in the entrenched essentially in the medical, the doctor community in our area. My wife is a doctor, therefore that's our social group. And so we are well connected in that regard. And those are some of the best tenants you can get. Med students, doctors that are in their residency or just post-residency.
Nursing students.
We get a lot of nurses, CPAs, young professionals. Mm-hmm. Those are great people as well because they're very focused on their work and on their career. As a result, they want a very nice place to come home to. They leave it very nice when they leave in the morning. They're gone all day. They come back and sleep in it. And that's generally the model that I've seen. Therefore, the wear and tear is very low. And once again, they pride themselves on the place. They also reach out to my property management company anytime the toilet paper holder falls off, and we have the ability to then maintain it as we go. So maintenance doesn't get deferred. So we generally can keep the level of the home very high as a result.
Mm-hmm. What's the ballpark rents that you're getting for your homes?
I would say that a good number for me as a landlord to use is $400 a bedroom. That can fluctuate. The top end in these areas is probably $500. I think you're pushing it to get beyond that. There are some exceptions to the rule. I own a two-bed that's part of a duplex, and we get $1,400 a month. So that would be $700 a month. But that's an anomaly because it's to a young professional that wants a very nice place, wants it maintenance free. So you can't really use the $700 a bedroom as a benchmark.
You've been doing this for 7 years. How many properties have you actually done this with?
Oh gosh. I'm also a flipper. Flipper has a very negative connotation, so I want to paint a better picture. I am the flipper that goes in and actually provides a house that we can be proud of, which keeps me out of a lot of property. There's a lot of flips that simply don't suit our skill set because I want to be able to sleep at night and know that we're providing great housing for the family that bought it, the individual that bought it. So I have flipped a lot of homes, and I also own a bunch of rental property. Our hands have probably been in and remodeled, I don't know, probably anywhere from 50 to 70 homes in total.
Wow, okay, that's quite a bit. And how many of those do you still own?
We are coming up on having our 20th cash flowing unit, but I also own the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, and the 24th already. So those are kind of waiting in the hopper.
Those are in progress then, huh?
They're waiting for us to have time to get to them so that they can be in progress.
Okay. Well, that's great. Let's talk about flipping a little bit. So sounds like you're doing a high-end flip for a family who would move in and live there.
Yep.
Are you doing it in the same areas?
Generally. Mm-hmm. And part of my reasoning behind it, I might not do very well on flips every time, but I like the idea of getting owner occupants into these neighborhoods because they're the ones that are there to fight crime and maintain property. Generally, they're going to bring up the values of the property and the attraction to that neighborhood. So I might not always hit a home run, but I do hit a home run in that I own 4 or 5 houses on that street, and I just plugged in somebody that's going to be a watchdog and really care.
So you're playing Monopoly. You're buying up. You're
essentially
taking control of the entire neighborhood.
There's a lot. I have multiple situations where I own neighboring homes. I really like that because if I've got to get a variance from the neighbor, I can talk to myself. If I want to put an egress window in because I have to have 6 feet from my foundation line to the property line, but I've only got 5 feet 9 inches, I can draft up paperwork. It isn't free, but I have options there. So I certainly have a bias toward buying homes next to each other. And certainly I like that model because I can protect the neighborhood.
So on any particular street, you might own some rentals. Maybe you flipped a house to a family that's down the street as well.
It is challenging for us to drive through the East Town area. My wife and I actually lived there for multiple years. We own the house in the backyard. We own the house next to that. We flipped the house across the street. So it is challenging for us to drive around East Town and not know what the house looks like on the inside, not know who's there, simply because we've just been involved with so many of them now. It's really fun taking my mom around.
How do the numbers typically work out for you on a flip? What do you typically pay? I mean, is it pretty much, you're paying the same ballpark of what you were paying for a property you might own, and then the rehab would be the same, or are the numbers different?
I would say that they're a little bit different because in a flip setting, I'm going to look for a property that maybe needs a little bit less work. So in this scenario, if it has a 10-year-old furnace, and my HVAC guy comes in and says it doesn't have cracked heat exchangers, it still has 5, 10, 15 years of good life, in that setting we wouldn't change it. So generally speaking, as a result of doing maybe a little bit less on the flip of a home, I can afford to pay a bit more, $10,000, $20,000 more on the in. And then generally I'm going to save that on the remodel. And then I'm going to, of course, sell a home. I would say that a historic metrics that we used is I wanted to make a profit of about $20,000 on a flip. The challenge with that is everybody's business is structured differently. There are guys out there that have a ton of overhead. So $10,000 of that goes to the big, neat, clean truck and the trailer and the tools and all of that. I operate out of my home. I've got a home office. I prefer it that way. I can wake up in the morning and go to work whenever I want to. I can work very late into the night, but I also don't have an expense associated with it. So I try to be a very low overhead, low fixed cost guy so that my $20,000 supposed profit on a flip is truly closer to that $20,000. It doesn't always go well. There's times where it hasn't been that. And I've got a great story if you care to hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I guess really my best example was most recently. The flip opportunities have disappeared in the last couple of years, largely because we see a bullish real estate market and a lot of, I don't want to say mom and pop shops like that's a negative, but just people that haven't been in this game for a long time are coming into the market looking for paint and carpet flips. And as a result, I can't compete with that because we're going to do a brand new kitchen, granite countertops. It's just simply our model that works. So we just recently did a flip in an area on the northeast side of Grand Rapids, and it's a great area where we had the property sold. We had it under contract for about $115,000, and we went to get the appraisal, and the appraisal came in $12,000 below what we had it sold at. So of course we try to fight that. We try to combat that. We try to work any angle we can. The only option was ultimately we could kill that deal and then search for a new buyer. The original buyer was an FHA buyer, so they had about a 3.5% down mortgage that they were going with, and that appraisal was going to stay with that house for 6 months. So all my FHA buyers are now out of the running if I want to sell it for that $115 that we spoke of.
Because an FHA buyer is not going to be able to come in with the additional $12,000
exactly
that's necessary to close.
So I am then limited to more of a conventional buyer, which in that price range, generally speaking, that's an entry-level home. So it's a first-time home buyer. Generally speaking, they don't have $25,000 for the sake of a down payment. Therefore, my largest pool of buyers are going to be FHA buyers. So it really backed me into a corner as the homeowner because I, in my mind, had already used those funds up on the next projects because I knew when I was going to close and I knew that I'm going to be turning this money over. Mind you, this is private money I'm paying a percentage on. So this is important in my world. So I ultimately made the decision to accept $12,000 less for the property. And that is all profit. I mean, that is profit that just disappeared into the wind. And the reason it happened is because in that particular neighborhood, we didn't have the comps, the comparable sales to prove that the home was in fact worthy of lending up to $115,000. So an appraiser came in and said, nope, it's only worthy of up to $103,000. Granted, I look at the comparables and they didn't have the brand new kitchen. They didn't have the stainless steel appliances, the granite countertops, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My point is I overcorrect, and as a result, the opportunity for flips out there to my company is less relative to somebody who does it on nights and weekends because they had an extra $50,000 sitting around and they watch HGTV and it looks fun.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you had to make the tough decision to cut your losses and just say, you know what, I'll take $12,000 less because that's my buyer pool. That's my buyer pool, and I'm paying 10% interest on this money that I've got out there.
And the challenge there is, if I would have killed that deal, it could have sat on the market for another month. I would certainly have done a price drop of $5,000, maybe $10,000, to shop for that proper conventional buyer that simply might not have been there. So ultimately, in my mind, I'm looking at this thinking this is going to push the return of that capital out 2 to 6 months, depending on how it goes. And ultimately, this was coming into the winter. I don't like owning vacant property in the winter. I've got to shovel driveways. I've got to pay heat, all these other issues that go with having vacant property in the winter. So ultimately, after weighing all of the risks versus weighing the value of having that money back in my hands, which I can then turn over again or invest in rentals or what have you, it simply made sense to take a $10,000 bath on it. And a $12,000 bath on it. And we still made a profit on the project.
Yeah, it certainly came out ahead.
It certainly wasn't worth the time that goes into the project and the risk, because I'm risking, that's all that money is at risk when I invest. So you've got to partner that risk relative to the gain that goes with it, which is part of why I'm involved as a builder with clients and as a real estate agent otherwise, because there is simply less risk and it's not my money all the time.
Right. Yes, it just shows you, and any flippers who are listening to this, that you can do everything right. You can buy right, you can do the rehab right, but if you're, depending on the type of buyer you're going for, an appraisal could really sink your numbers.
And trust me, there's in this regard, there was nothing I could do about it. We tried, we fought, we talked to everybody we could talk to, and we were simply just up a creek.
Painful. Let's talk about your team, because you're a licensed contractor.
Yep.
Or a licensed builder.
Licensed builder.
Licensed builder. And you have a team that helps you do all of these. So can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Sure. I am very blessed to employ a lot of my best friends, shockingly, multiple guys that were in our wedding. 3 of the guys I went to elementary school with, so I've known them for a long time. One of those guys is essentially the head of my construction portion of what we do. It took years to get it to that point. I don't recommend anybody starts a company at that point until they have experience and history. There's certainly trust involved with a lot of these situations downtown. I don't like my tools growing legs and walking off. I don't like seeing material stolen. So I have a history with these people that has provided a certain level of trust that has served me very well. I also employ a college roommate and a brother of the college roommate. All of these guys collectively are best friends of mine. Therefore, I also have some additional value when we're doing these projects in that I really like showing up at my job sites. So there's certainly a social value too. Ultimately, we have to make money or else nobody can eat. So I'm not stupid, but there's certainly some value that is brought there. And we subcontract a lot. So almost everything that we do, I could find a subcontractor for. So my in-house crew does certain things. And largely it's the very detail-oriented things. We're going to install our cabinets. We're going to install our backsplashes. We're going to install our doors, our trim, a lot of the finish products, because I like having a strong control over those items, because that is what is going to be our end product. So my guys are very well trained and very skilled in that capacity. And it's very difficult in these downtown homes that aren't square, aren't level, to make that look good at times. So there's some tricks and some skills that we have to have in order to really dial those things in and kind of fool the eye and really make you think it's perfect when it isn't. So it's taken years to kind of develop that, and just simply a lot of experience, just a lot of doing it. But I can also say that in a lot of those items, we also can subcontract a lot of that. And I've got a great team of subcontractors. I've gone through dozens of subcontractors to get to the ones I'm at today. I am generally more willing to pay a subcontractor more if they are just a good guy to work with. Do they communicate well? Do they provide a high level of quality relative to what my standard is? So generally speaking, if a painter was going to bill me $3,000 and they're going to come through and not vacuum the trim and spray the trim, just paste it to this brand new trim and just ruin it, and our walls look terrible and paint is peeling in a week, etc., I'd rather pay $1,000 more, get a guy in there who's a professional who really knows what he's doing, and we get a return on that for the sake of the long term. And generally, I just like working with the guys. So there's certainly a value in not using only the bargain basement subs.
Yeah, you pay a little bit more, but you get better quality.
Absolutely.
Result. Now, you recently did a spec home as well. Can you talk about that?
I did. Part of my model here, being a licensed builder, is that there's going to be opportunity to build, to build homes, to do remodels, to do additions, et cetera, et cetera. So my logic behind this was, who is going to employ a guy to build a brand new home for them when he's never built a home? You'd be stupid to employ that guy. So my theory behind it was, okay, I will risk my money in hopes of getting a return. I will prove that I can build a home. I will prove that I can build a nice home. So it will set me up for the future of building a house on a lake for a doctor, because that's part of the community we're surrounded with, of just generally pursuing those types of things. I don't like risking other people's money and potentially screwing friends or screwing family in that regard. So I generally put my money where my mouth is, prove the model. That's the point at which I would go to the more general public, if you will, and simply be more confident. So now we've got a new build under our belts, pursuing more, and there's other potential opportunities that can come with all of that.
Mm-hmm. So, and how did that work out for you? Were you pretty happy with the process? And
I can say that collectively it was a lot of my time. I think that's simply because it was the first full-scale new build that I did, so that I have done rather. So now that I understand it, I'd say there's some economies of scale moving forward. We ultimately will make a profit on it, but it is not as strong of a profit as I would have liked. I'm generally pretty hard on myself, though, so I think that I probably should be a little bit happier about it. But there will ultimately be a profit that at the end we'll be able to do something with. It's capital that's generated. We can reinvest. We can do whatever we want. But I would say it certainly was not as handsome as what I would hope moving forward. So we're going to refine the systems. Learned a lot on this one. Learned a lot of the do's and the don'ts. And I would say that as we do more, we'll be able to dial things in, and those numbers will get a little bit better.
All right. So it sounds like, building houses, that may be something in your future. Perhaps a new direction. Is that one of the things you're considering?
That's an additional direction.
An additional direction.
Now, I like wearing a lot of hats. They all feed all the other services that we provide.
Let's talk about that, because one of the things that you've done recently has been to go to Nigeria with your wife. And I want to talk about that. And I know before you left, you said you were going to be spending a lot of time while there thinking about what new direction you might go in. So I'm wondering if you could just briefly talk about your time in Nigeria, why you went, what you did there.
Sure. And
the thoughts that were going through your head while you were there.
Yeah, I can't properly corral all those thoughts, but I'll do the best I can. The point of this trip was my wife is an OB-GYN doc. So we were visiting an OB-GYN doc missionary family that's working in Nigeria. It provided my wife a lot of opportunity to do surgeries she would never do here, to simply just do a lot of surgeries, generally speaking. It also provided me the opportunity to stand over my wife while she was in the OR and watch her work. So there was an extreme value in the experience that we got. I was able to witness 8 C-sections, and I almost cried every time they got the baby out, and it cried. This is a big deal there because they don't have a high rate of success with pregnancy there, because they generally don't have access to medical care. So, and we spent a lot of time with the missionary family. We're trying to explore if long-term missions is something that makes sense for my wife and I, and trying to develop what that looks like. This traces back to real estate because we knew years ago that this is something we wanted to explore, and having passive income in the form of rental property is part of what will equip us to make those decisions moving forward. I don't know if it's long-term missions, if it's short-term missions, if it's giving money away. The capacity in which we are involved is still to be determined, and I think that'll ever be evolving based on where we're at in life. But that was kind of the point of the trip, and it provided me with over a month of time away from my business to just kind of digest all of this. Because I do so many different things and wear so many hats in a given day, it helped me to learn the inefficiencies in my business. For example, I was micromanaging the construction aspect. Like I said, I've got an elementary friend who does a great job overseeing our projects, and I was simply being a middleman, and there was some inefficiencies that were recognized there. So that was helpful. It also helped me to realize that I want to do more building for clients and act as a real estate agent, because that is my skill set. I love dealing with the public. I would claim to be a fairly strong communicator, and having the real estate license and the building license play together very well. So it helped me to realize that I want to focus my time on growing those aspects of the business, largely because I don't need to be involved very much anymore in our downtown rental game. I certainly have to be involved on the buy side, but I can turn that stuff over to the guys that I've been using and working with for years, because they're professionals, they know what they're doing, and my involvement was simply inefficient.
Well, that's great. So it helped you realize maybe some of the things you're focusing your attentions on, you don't need to be focusing your attention
And it helped
on.
me to realize what I really enjoy doing. And I'm really enjoying working with the public to help them buy homes. And I'm really enjoying building a spec home, remodeling a basement, or finishing a basement rather, remodeling a kitchen, et cetera. So it helped me to realize that I can spend my time doing a lot of those functions of my business because I'm passionate about them. I really enjoy them. And I don't need to get in the way of the guys doing their stuff in my passive income game.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I appreciated about you being in Nigeria is that I could look at the stats for this podcast and see, wow, we have a listener in Nigeria.
Yeah, I was intentional about getting you the Nigerian listenership. And I told everybody there, but I don't think anybody cared about Grand Rapids real estate while I was there.
I only saw the downloads that you did. But, this is great. And, I'm glad that you were able to sit down and talk with me and share your story. And, good luck with your new direction.
Well, thank you.
I think it's great that you're realizing, okay, maybe there are some things that you can let other people handle for you. And, when you are able to let go and let other people take over some of the things that, frankly, you don't want to do. Or
Certainly.
maybe you're not the best person to be doing it.
And my stress level's gone down considerably.
Absolutely. So, congratulations on that, Patrick. And thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me.
It's my pleasure. I enjoy sharing my passion.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.